It was the worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach, and fitness expert Lisa Goldenthal.
Thanks for coming to the Power Up Your Pivot 100th podcast series. Get ready to feel unstoppable, energized, resilient, unshakable, and unbreakable. Live your best life. We've all been knocked to our knees. Learn how to bounce back better, body, mind, and soul. Overcome the COVID curves and anxiety and live your best life so that you can be unstoppable, resilient, and have more energy. Set yourself up for the win. He completed his medical degree, served as an interventional physiatrist. First 3 years of practice were not at all unusual, and his practice was growing steadily when in 1999, Dr. Matthew Michaels diagnosed with a critical illness that required extensive treatment, including a leave of absence, chemotherapy, eventually bone marrow transplantation. Michaels retook his medical boards, including a specialty board, starting to return to part-time work as an interventional physiatrist, maintaining his board certification, working full-time in clinical interventional pain. Dr. Michaels has suffered from chronic back pain since the age of 12. This back pain has at times been disabling, but ultimately served as a tool for self-discovery, self-education. He wrote a best-selling book about his methods for treating back pain titled Take Control of Your Back Pain Practice. Welcome, Dr. Matthew Michaels.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here, Lisa.
I'm so excited to welcome you to the podcast, and I really know we had a chance behind the scenes here to really talk about all of your beliefs and everything you've learned. And I know it is said that through all the pain we've all been through, that our biggest teachers and lessons come along. So why don't we start at the beginning with your story, because it's insane.
It is kind of crazy. And the bottom line there is that my experience with this illness started in 1999. It was an autoimmune disease, an inflammation of the brain that caused a lot of problems, including multiple seizures per day at the beginning. I was first told back in 1999 that I had a glioblastoma, which would be the most malignant form of brain cancer. And I was told that I would probably be dead in 6 months and I should go home, get my affairs in order, and prepare to die. That at the age of 33 was not a fun experience. And the bottom line is that just based on the general issues of what was going on, the odds were that the doctor would have been right, that that's actually what I had going on. So I believed him, and I kind of really got lost in the grief and the fear of dying at that point. But ultimately, as time went on, I had brain biopsies that came back negative for cancer, but positive for inflammation. The second biopsy put me in a coma for 2 weeks, and that then led to an open biopsy of actually a brain surgery that looked further. Again, my slides went all over the country looking for viral DNA, for fungal DNA. Was it an infection? Was it a tumor? Really, they couldn't figure it out. And so long about September of 1999, I decided myself that my doctors really were not going to be able to figure this out, and I would have to look at it myself. Right. So I literally went to the hospital, requested my records, went home with a giant file of records because it was all paper back at that time.
Yeah.
Poured over my own notes, my own charts, looked at the slides myself, saw the inflammation of brain and blood vessels, and decided for myself that this had to be an autoimmune disease.
Wow.
Went to my doctors and told them that I need chemotherapy. They were still fearful and nervous about hurting me, which is what doctors are supposed to do. Be careful. But I felt as though I was on the verge of heading towards death in any case because of the damage that was being done. And so ultimately, we did get chemotherapy done, and it completely shut down the disease. The seizures stopped immediately.
Wow.
But then within about 3 to 4 months, they started coming back. So I had more chemotherapy, same thing again. And this went on for 4 or 5 rounds until my bone marrow stopped responding to the chemicals that were supposed to bring the bone marrow back up. So I knew that I couldn't just keep on having high doses of Cytoxan every several months because ultimately that would kill me. So I contacted Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center in Seattle about a bone marrow transplant for autoimmune disease. They were one of two places in the world that did that at the time. The other was in Athens, Greece, and I wasn't going to go there.
Right.
So I spoke to the medical director of the program at Fred Hutch, and they agreed to do the transplant. That then happened in February through June of 2002. That was curative. And at that point, I began my convalescence. Now, I went through a lot of chemo, a lot of radiation, things that could have easily killed me. But when I became sick, I was a competitive triathlete. So not a professional by any means, but getting to the point after having just started of going to top 10 for the age group. I believe that the fitness that I had at that time kind of allowed me to survive and thrive through the treatment.
Plus being a doctor too, I mean, who else would have known to pour over your records and diagnose yourself and insist on treatments that weren't even recommended by your team?
Yeah, I mean, that helps. I can tell you that I know other very bright people who are going through similar kinds of experiences. I know a guy with stage 4 lung cancer who was basically told that his life was over, who has found a way to survive. He's using a variety of other treatments that are not recommended by his doctors, but it's the never give up philosophy. Do the research, be active, be engaged, decide for yourself what you're going to do. And so he actually is several years into this with cancer that has spread throughout his body, including to his brain, and actually going back to work now. So the fact is that was a horrifying experience that kind of makes me feel like mine was almost trivial. And so it is always possible to wrap your hands around your own problem and take action. The fact is, though, that whether you're ill and trying to survive or whether you're healthy and trying to just stay healthy, you can never be passive. You have to take action. And that just means eating better and exercising more often, controlling your stress and anxiety. Then you have to do those things, because if you're passive and complacent, that leads to decline and death. And that's the basic lesson there, is never, ever, ever let life roll.
I love that.
The human body, the human spirit are designed for stress. That's what we're designed for.
Right.
When we become complacent, we slide downhill.
Well, I wanted to speak to you about this, and it's fascinating to me because I've always believed that whether you're a doctor or you just know a doctor or you don't believe in doctors, your health is ultimately your own responsibility. And I really love your resilience and how you bounce back from that and how you serve others based on all the things that you've been through with your back pain and surviving this horrible autoimmune disease. And I also want to talk about something we both share in common as a passion, health, and fitness. And how has that helped you bounce back? And how can that help our audience also too? Because we're in an epidemic and a pandemic of mental health problems, weight loss problems, and not just a pandemic.
Well, that's a lot of questions you just asked. So let's unpack those. The first was about fitness.
Right.
So for me, the fact that I really felt like the fitness that I brought into this illness was critical in my survival, and my not just surviving, but coming out the other end in a place where I could actually go on to live a real life. Now, I had been so sick that I had disability insurance that had given up on challenging my diagnosis. They had basically committed to paying me until I was 65, my disability benefits, but I hated the idea of being at home and not working.
Right.
So I actually went back and retook my medical boards to prove to myself that after having had a brain disease, I was still able to think and reason as a doctor should be. So I did that, passed just fine, and slowly built myself back into practice. I volunteered in a medical clinic for years. Finally went back to full-time work in 2008 and slowly progressed from there. But at the same time, I was back to racing a duathlon in 2004. Sorry about the cat. And so
I love it.
I was able then to do a duathlon in 2004. I was slow, much slower than I'd ever been before, but I did okay. I finished the race and I did a reasonable time. So to me, that notion of getting back to fitness satisfied a lot of my anxieties about my future, because of course, radiation and chemo can cause health problems long term. So I wanted to make sure that I was ready for the next storm to come my way, because there's always going to be another storm. So my goal that I set at that point was that I was going to do Ironman. I had not done Ironman before the illness. I was going to do it after the illness. And that finally did happen in 2012, actually. So exactly 10 years after the transplant, I did an Ironman. And that was a spectacular experience emotionally and physically, et cetera, to allow me to get back to a place where I feel like, okay, now I'm truly recovered. Now, whatever comes next is what comes next. It's not what happened before, because I've recovered from that.
So I love the mental health bonus that you get from physical health, because once you can do the hard things, it helps build your self-confidence and self-discipline, which you always had, the no problem. But once you know that you can do an Ironman, doesn't it seem like the sky's the limit?
Well, it does, and I can tell you that I'm not fast. My talent is for tolerance of pain, right? So
You are
it was
that
just
guy. You're the pain tolerator.
yeah, just slogging through, basically making it happen regardless of how much it hurts. And so that was my experience with Ironman. It was not like exhilarating because I wasn't flying through, I wasn't racing. I was participating. Really, is what it comes down to, which is the truth for most people who do Ironman. And so that specific factor played a role in how I've lived my life. That has led to all the other philosophies that have led me to where I am now.
Well, I just feel like people in our audience today, we're all going through so much. I've shared with you some of the stress that I've been through in the pandemic and living here in Santa Monica and getting shut down, not being able to see people, being here by myself. And then the Black Lives Matter was like right over here. And it was like one thing after another. And then someone wrecked my car. And I feel like the resilience and the grit that you have to be an entrepreneur, to survive an illness. How can you advise other people to stay resilient, never give up, just take your health into your own hands and keep fighting the good fight with grit?
Well, in all honesty, one of the ways that I think about this myself when I'm under a lot of stress, for whatever reason, bad decisions that I've made that I have to cope with and recover from. The fact is that life is supposed to be challenging. The human body, mind, and spirit are designed for challenge. When we're not challenged and we become complacent, it's important to remember that life is a downhill slope. Life is lost. That's the very Buddhist philosophy. We are all going to die. That's just the way it is. We're all going to age. You can't stop it. You might be able to slow it down. But the fact is, you always have to be working to at least hold your ground in life. And so when it comes to these various issues of stress and anxiety,
Yeah.
recognize that stress is a good thing. It helps you cope and be more resilient. So don't think of it as, oh, woe is me. I'm under stress. I made a bad decision. Say, okay, this is life. This is the nature of things. I just have to adjust and adapt and do what I can do to stay on track and use this experience to make me better. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Very important to know it. And I think that really helps inform decisions that you're going to make tomorrow when the next bad thing happens, because you know it's coming.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that because I know everybody's out there has their thing. It might not be a life-threatening illness or whatever it is, but to each of us, that thing is the thing that we need to slog through. And the stress is good, and we need to have health and fitness to help be unstoppable. And I know this is a completely random other topic that jumping to another level, but I know you and I have talked about this before, and I wanted to talk about how can we actually change how our genes are expressed.
Well, so what we're talking about really is the topic of genetics versus epigenetics.
Right.
And this is a very important topic. The fact is that our genes are the blueprint that we're born with. How those genes are expressed depends on the way we live our lives. And there's a lot of examples that can be extreme as far as our bodies can be completely different based on what we put in them and how we live. So, for example, there's examples out there of twin boys who are born. One decides they're transgender before puberty and goes on female hormones. That person grows to an adult looking completely female, whereas their brother is completely male, and they're genetically identical. So
Right.
epigenetics is extremely powerful. It can change everything. So you have to recognize that decisions that you make today, the decision that you make to eat this or eat that, to exercise or to not exercise, will both turn on and turn off the genes that are available to you. And so from there, recognizing that you're born basically with a genetic potential for things like strength and flexibility. And how you do things throughout your life is going to determine where on that spectrum you're going to end up, at the bottom of your range of flexibility or at the top of your range of flexibility. So most Olympic gymnasts are born with a fair degree of genetic potential, but they're
Right.
not going to realize that potential if they're not training to achieve the highest level that they can for their genetic potential. So what we're talking about is optimizing your potential to be as healthy and resilient as you can possibly be. And so recognizing that the decisions that you make all day are critical. Am I going to eat that cookie or not? If I eat that cookie, am I going to stop after having had one, or am I going to go ahead and eat the entire box of cookies? That is going to turn genes on, turn genes off for insulin metabolism and for various things. So recognizing that your genetics are not locked in, you can be better, you can do better, and you just have to start making the right decisions. Now, there are platforms for that. There are genetic tests out there that not only will help you know what your genetics are, but know how your particular genes are going to be influenced by your behavior, by whether or not you're exercising or eating properly.
And by your mental health too. Like, it's sort of like, who do you want to be in the world? And are you going to let things take you down? Or can you go outside? Can you take some quick breaths? Can you change your state, as Tony Robbins would say, and show up in a more energetic way? Or is this thing like my car that just got me down going to drag me down, and I can't show up for the other people that need me to influence them? So it's the thing that I love about epigenetics. There's so many things, but I hate excuses so much. And so many times I talk to people, as you do too, in our mutual passion for weight loss, where it's like, yeah, I just have these Jewish genetics. So I have Jewish genetics and I don't rest on them. Or yeah, that's just how my hips are, and that's just how my family is. And when you give the situation and the citation rather of the twins, it means that just because you have certain genetics, they're not going to have to be expressed and make you obese unless you are eating the cookie. And just even getting back to the cookie also too, how do you forgive yourself and move on?
You know what? I very much agree with that, because I think I've seen for a lot of people that as we're trying to make good decisions, and I would consider the term not really about weight loss, but having a healthy weight all the time, trying to maintain that level of healthy weight. Because most people who've tried to lose weight know losing weight is not that hard. Everybody can lose weight, but then getting to a place where you can keep your weight stable is very, very hard to do. But the idea there is to recognize that one bad decision does not make you a bad person. You don't have to feel guilty and say, okay, I had that cookie and then I had 3 more and it's over. I'm going to give up. Don't do that. We're human. You're going to make mistakes. Say, okay, I had the cookies, but one decision I'd like people to make is, okay, I ate a cookie or I had a bite of a cookie. And you know what? It was okay. It wasn't awesome though. Bottom line is, if you really want a cookie, go to a bakery, get a fresh chocolate chip cookie and eat that cookie, so that it's an experience, a wonderful, pleasurable experience, and not just a Chips Ahoy, right? Not just some prepackaged cookie that is really not a great experience that you're just eating because it's there. If you want something sweet, do it. Go out, let that experience roll through your body so that you don't crave it again for a long time. We're not going to be perfect. That's not going to happen. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make bad decisions. And sometimes having that one awesome cookie is a good decision because it can let you de-stress, but then move on. Don't feel guilty about it. Get back on track immediately.
I don't believe in guilt. I think it's a waste of an emotion. It's like, just because you ate the cookie doesn't mean you have to eat the whole box. Just because you ate the whole box doesn't mean that you're going to be fat for the rest of your life. You have
Indeed.
to do the Fido thing I mentioned on my live the other day. Forgive it, do over. You can't just stay there. You got to just Fido out of there. Forgive it.
Roll with it, learn the lesson. Don't be passive. Don't just accept I'm going to eat the cookies or what's in front of me. I'm going to eat them. Be more active. Say, I got to have something sweet. I'm going to go to my favorite ice cream shop and get an ice cream cone because I feel the craving for sweet, but just kind of junky prepackaged stuff. Don't do that. If you got to do something to kind of indulge yourself, do it. Go to your favorite coffee shop. Have that awesome cranberry scone with a good cup of coffee or a cappuccino. Do something that's an experience that you're going to revel in so that it can kind of live in your brain for a while so you're not looking constantly for the next divergence.
Yeah, and enjoy it, because it's not what you do 10% of the time that's going to affect your genetics and your body. It's the 90%, it's the 85%, it's the 80%. Like, can you be 80% good and enjoy it if you mess up? And we all mess up, and then you start over and you're like, I enjoyed that cookie. Instead of I'm an idiot, I ate the cookie. Just change.
Yep. I'm eating this cookie and it's awesome. The chocolate's gooey, it's hot, it smells amazing. I just love it. And I'm really just get that experience in your brain so that you don't need it again in 5 minutes or 5 days, that you can put it aside and, maybe plan on doing that once a month. Because again, we're human. We have to do things that we love and enjoy. That's part of the process, is understanding how to indulge, but indulge in a way that's meaningful and allows you to move on with your healthy lifestyle.
Well, Dr. Michaels, this is like some fabulous information. Is there any other information you want to leave our audience with about how they can be unstoppable like you were with your illness and your back pain, and resilient and have grit and keep going through this pandemic? Because we got your back. We want to support you, you guys.
Absolutely. And so there are two things that I think are very meaningful from my particular experience. One is specifically about my specialty, which is back and neck pain. I've written a book about that called Take Control of Your Back Pain. Learn how to stop hurting yourself. Because in my opinion, back and neck pain is not about some old injury or some genetic issue. It's about the way we live our lives every day. You can re-injure your back. You can make it more healthy based on your posture and movement and understanding the underlying problem. When you understand what's happening in there to your discs and why they hurt and why it is that something as simple as washing the dishes can throw you into a flare-up of pain, that you don't have to go pick up a bag of concrete to hurt your back, just bending the wrong way can cause the same problem. And that just changing your biomechanics, changing the way you stand at the sink or the way you run the vacuum cleaner can have you not go into a flare-up of back pain. That's what my book is about. And I think it's very meaningful because it really can take you from being a back pain patient to being a person who has some back pain, but it's just part of who you are, not a big deal. It doesn't change your life. That's where I want people to get to, and that's what my book is about. Additionally, I am the chief medical officer for a company called Clinical and Herbal Innovations, Inc., which our flagship product is called Panoxol, which is a combination of 2 amino acids and 4 herbs for cardiovascular health. This is the kind of thing that I also think is meaningful. Having this product in your system, the horse chestnut, the cayenne, the red yeast rice, the ginkgo biloba, these things induce nitric oxide, dilate your blood vessels, and improve blood flow. It's the kind of thing that for me, it's important to take every day to control my blood pressure, to get better blood flow. I believe it actually helps me with my workouts and my recovery. Having your own go-to, Panoxol might be the right thing for you. It might not be, but I encourage you to look into it and try it. So Panoxol, Panoxol is a tool, again, a tool that we can all use for better health.
We'll put the links in this podcast when we send it out. So where would you like to have people find you?
So they can certainly find me at panoxol.com. That's my product. It's a meaningful thing that I think people need to look at the very least. And if they're not going to use that product, find some other way to induce nitric oxide naturally with natural substances. Then my website, which is Take Control Pain, and then Take Control Pain /success. There are a series of videos where I'm speaking just like this about the tools to control back pain. I think this can be super meaningful. I've had more success using this process of teaching people about the biomechanics of back pain rather than giving them a nerve block or a nerve ablation. Those things can help, but they don't change the problem. Understanding the problem and stopping re-injuring yourself, that's the key. And that's what these videos are about.
Well, prevention is everything rather than just managing symptoms. I'm so glad that I got a chance to finally sit down and talk to you. And I hope we get a chance to do this again. So thank you for helping our audience be unstoppable, Dr. Michaels.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming to the Power to Pivot 100th podcast launch. Whole CEO with Lisa G. After over 20 years helping people lose weight and get fit, I'm excited to announce I have found the missing link. Message me if you want to learn how to look better, feel better, and go faster with a master. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast and share it with your friends.